And there we go. So hello, everybody. Welcome to the Trauma Recovery School. And this evening is an evening hosted. It's, something that's everyone's asked for. People are very interested in what brain spotting is, why it's so effective. So I thought, why not ask one of my super amazing clients to come on and give her version and to come and talk us through this. So if you can't make tonight, it's going to be going into the Facebook group anyway, but let's get cracking. So tonight's aimed at those people who are suffering from anxiety, stress, and past trauma, or you've had some form of depression and you want to find out how to resolve it quickly and effectively. For those who have tried everything, and I do get that, I have people who will message me and say, I've done everything now. You're my last sort of resort. Hope. What do I do? For those who have worked with, this is quite important, non-specialist therapists who don't understand trauma. It's quite interesting today in a Facebook group, I saw a post from someone saying, I'm working with my therapist and she doesn't understand my trauma. And that's exactly why I do what I do. For those who want to get rid of the anxiety and it holds them back every day, and those that want regular therapy-based practices that aren't any gimmicks. So if you don't know who I am, and in particular, I want to say welcome to everybody in the Trauma Recovery School, all our new people. I am Bonita. I'm the master therapist, coach, and trainer. And I specialize in anxiety, stress, past trauma, and in particular PTSD. So there's a whole list of things that I do. But generally what I specialize in is I have created the integrated trauma method, which is a combination of techniques that work really well. However, let me not tell you about that. Let me introduce you to Susan. But before that, Susan, I just want you to look at the slide and tell us, does that sum you up? Did that sum you up?
Yes. Definitely.
Every one of them.
Yes.
I think we could probably add 100 more to that list.
Probably, yeah.
Excellent. So I'm just going to stop the share, and what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and pin Susan so that people can see you really clearly. Okay. So thank you, Susan, for being here tonight. It means so much to me that you have put your brave pants on to come on tonight to talk about the integrated trauma method, but also how we've worked and the before and after Susan, because we've seen such a tremendous change. So I'm going to crack on. I want you to describe, just briefly, and be aware you can tell us as much or as little as you want here, but what was life like before we started to work together, or before you were introduced to the trauma recovery method?
Well, so it was my life and I didn't know how bad it was. And I had a crap job and I'd always had crap relationships and, with partners or with my family. And I had a low level depression, I think. I was scared of everything. I found it hard to get up in the morning. I got up in the morning because I just got on with it, but I found it difficult. And then last year, a lot of things came to a head because the police got involved with my childhood trauma. And I was forced to face everything. So I was actually forced to go into explicit details about my childhood trauma, and it broke me. That's what the thought is. It absolutely broke me. I was on my knees when I called you that day, or when you called me back. I couldn't leave the house. I was terrified. I felt like I was broken. That's what the thought is, just by facing it. So obviously I'd lived, I'm 48, I'd lived all my life with this trauma, but just having to face it full on, head on, was horrendous. And I wanted to die, thought I was going to die.
And I remember talking to you because you were walking in Bedford Park. Do you remember? You just needed to clear your head. And you were saying to me that, this is the final straw. I cannot do this anymore. I've been doing it for such a long time. And I have to get past this. That was sort of your final straw. And I want you to try and summarize, like, what was it like? Because we've been working together now for about 4 months, 3 months. Yeah. So what was it like to go through the trauma therapy? Because I think that's the biggest question my clients ask. Like, what do I expect? Is it going to be hard? What do I face? Like, oh my gosh, what is it going to be like? Because no one really experiences it. And it's hard for me to describe this, but like, you've done it, you've come through it. What was the experience like for you?
It's like coming home. That's how I would describe it. Meeting myself for the first time, like learning who I am, even though I know who I am, you know, and even though I've lived with myself all my life, just meeting myself for the first time head on. And it was hard, but the first session that we had together was so phenomenal. It changed that one session, that for 4 hour, however long it was, honestly changed my life. Just in that one session. I didn't realize I was walking around feeling so terrified of being got all the time. And in that one session, it went and has never come back. And I felt lighter. And then working, and so that spurred me on. So working through each session with you, I was spurred on to get rid of all that stuff. And it's hard to put my finger on it now, because it feels like I had all these memories. I knew they were there. I faced them, dealt with them, and now they're still there, but they have no feelings attached to them. They're just fact. That's just the way it was. And I can live a life, and I can think about things I've never thought about before. Like, what do I want to be happy?
And I know that we spent a lot of time in sessions uncovering and you making links between that and never knowing that, well, that thing there impacted my life there, but also here, here, and here. And we systematically worked through it like a checklist almost, didn't we?
Yeah.
In terms of like your realization, but then we had to also map it to life, didn't we?
Yeah, someone's saying there's no sound.
Oh, okay. Right, Claire, can we just check that there's I mean, can everybody hear us on the call, on the Zoom call? That's fine. If there's no sound, I think it's Carol that's struggling with sound. It's probably your phone or how you've connected. So we'll just carry on. So every part of your life had been affected, hadn't it, by your childhood trauma? Absolutely every part. And you almost learned to cope with it the older you got.
Yeah, I was thinking about it today. It's like having a needle in your eye. So you've got a needle in your eye and you're walking around and you're thinking there's something wrong, but I can't quite work out what it is that's wrong, and I can't see it, but I know there's something wrong. And then finally you pull the needle out of your eye, and then you can just live your life, and it's like, oh, life's great. There's no needle in my eye anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did have to, I mean, some of the sessions, you know, we have to be honest with people that some sessions were super amazing, great, and other sessions were super hard. And you worked extremely hard. I mean, you used to come before work to try and, you know, we used to see each other when we can, but to keep the momentum up, you know, over the 3 months in particular, and you've now chosen to continue to work with me because we've got great stuff to work on, right? Is those sessions, there were sessions where you had to confront what happened, how it happened, and then the realization at the end was so phenomenal for you. You were able to just like implement that in life, and you've made some big changes, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. I want to say that it's like, although I had to face things, the things were still, they were there anyway. So it wasn't like pretending, it wasn't like uncovering something that I didn't already know. And that's what feels like the beauty about doing this work, is that it's like, oh, that's what it was. And it's puts together what I know happened with what I felt happened. And it puts that together and explains it. And so, oh, sorry, Carol. yeah, it puts it together. So sorry, what was the question? I just wanted to say that while you were talking. I can't
Yeah,
remember what the question
that's
was.
fine. That's fine. So let's talk about how we dealt with and addressed, because the second question people will say to me is, those things that happened to me, those memories I have, I just don't want to go back and remember them. But it's quite hard to describe to someone that in the session, you do go back, because that's how we bring the recall, but we use so many different disassociated techniques that actually it's not like the raw facing. Is that, how would you describe it?
It's definitely not like therapy. I've done loads of counselling. It's not like that. It's not like therapy when you have to talk about things over and over again and you feel really rubbish. It's almost like a very intense feeling for a short amount of time, and then it goes. It's the weirdest feeling. So I think I said this to you the other day. It's like, oh, this is just weird, because you have such an intense feeling and you can feel it sort of disappearing away from you, and then you're just left with oh, okay, yeah, that happened and it sucked and that's it. So it's very intense for a short amount of time.
Yeah, and we used Brainspotting probably every session, I think, looking back now, because of the dynamic nature of this work. It's like we use so many different techniques to get the end result. Brainspotting played a really important part for you, and we were able to move from one technique into Brainspotting, and that's what really helped you to overcome some of the really, really deep-seated trauma that you'd not really been able to connect with before. Now, we had a Brainspotting session on Tuesday when I saw you. How would you go about describing like the experience? So, you know, I know from my point of view, I'm watching it, but experiencing a Brainspotting session, how would you describe what it's like going into the first stage, and then, you know, it's either very verbal or non-verbal, and it's a lot of both, and then suddenly, oh, you're through it. How would you describe that to someone who is really interested in finding out about Brainspotting?
It feels weird. So you do the thing where I have to follow the sticky thing, and you say to me, where is it? And it sounds a bit daft, but I can feel where it is, because all of a sudden I feel like intensely something, like scared, or it's just there. The for me the other day, it was just in my face. The memory was in my face, and then you kind of hold yourself in that place. So I was trying really hard to hold myself where the feeling was, because I had a specific feeling now in the present, which felt attached to something that happened in the past, which I didn't realize it was attached to that. And I was trying to hold myself with the memory, but also with the feeling, and just thinking about it, thinking about what I needed, what kind of was going on, or what was going on in my mind. And then it just started to change not the memory, kind of like the feeling started
Emotion,
to change.
you know,
Yeah.
it's like the feeling emotion is quite hard to really capture, because it's so different. And I think your Brainspotting sessions, they tended to be quite different every time. You had a different experience and a different link and learning.
Yes. This time it just felt like a paper bag. It just felt like paper. All of a sudden, the feeling, the memory felt like paper. It was very bizarre. It just felt like, and then it was just getting see-through. It sounds so bizarre. And it is a bit strange.
Yeah, and you feel like, I know your words are I'm through it. I've moved through it.
Yeah, it just goes. So the memory's still there, but I feel a certain amount of contentment. And it's almost like I said before, that there's a feeling from when I was little, and a thought of, oh yeah, I know what that was really, but I've never put the two things together. Now I've put the two things together. I know what it was. It sucked. It's over.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you're a few days post the session. What do you feel now?
I feel like what it feels like is that happened. I don't think about it. It's like it was there all the time in my mind, my whole life. That memory has been there my whole life. like a bogeyman trying to, waiting to jump out at me, that my subconscious mind would bring up often. I didn't know this until I didn't have this feeling anymore, and that's gone. There isn't that bogeyman memory. The memory, I just haven't really thought about it. That's the truth. There is no terrifying memory to jump out and get me when I'm walking along the street having a nice time. It's just the feeling's gone. The scariness about it is gone. I've matched something up in the head. It sucked. It's over. I'm an adult now. I'm not a 5-year-old little girl anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. But we also found that it affected your work environment, because where you were working then, you recognized through this process that it wasn't a great environment for you to be in, and there was a should we say, a bit of a masculinity about it that didn't suit you, but it also fed who the old Susan was. So that energy that you had to, because you pretended a lot, didn't you? You had to pretend to keep yourself going, and that was exhausting.
Yeah, and I realized that I was miserable in that job, even though I'd gone back to that job, even though I went in every day. It was like I was torturing myself. And then I suddenly woke up one day and thought, what am I doing? I don't want to be in this job. This job sucks. So I left, and now I've got a job that I like.
Yeah, you got a new job. So you started January with a new job. Do you think you would have moved into like a new job, also a new relationship? Yeah. I know. How exciting is that? Amazing. I mean, the old Susan would have gone, oh my God, I'm too scared for that. I don't do those things. So like, new job, new relationship in January, 3 months after the program, and you're like, I mean, I know how radiant you were on Tuesday. And then we did our therapy. We got through the Brainspotting session. We summarized it, and then here you are. I mean, it's just phenomenal, because 3 months ago, your trauma was so catastrophic, ingrained in every part of your life, that you've moved through it so seamlessly. What advice would you give someone who sat here tonight going, I need to do something, but I'm too scared? I can't take action, like I'm too scared. What would you tell them? What would you say?
I would say do it anyway. I was scared. I was really scared. I was also at the very bottom, so I had enough. I've done therapy since I was 18. So for 30 years, I've done talking therapy. And I guess it kept me alive, but I was surviving. So it helped me survive. So I'm not going to completely diss it, but now it sounds like, it's such a cliche, isn't it? But now I am living my life. So my advice is, do it. Yes, it's scary, but nothing is as scary as what you've been through already. So you go through something when you're little and it's terrifying, which is what has led you to this point. Nothing will ever be that scary again. Dealing with it, facing it, is not as scary as what you went through when you're little. This is just processing it. This is just matching together the pieces and putting them together and just parking it, and it's just gone. It's not like it didn't happen. It's not in denial. It's just not important anymore. So brilliant. Do it.
Yeah, that's a really good description. And I'm glad you said that, like, talk therapy helped you survive. What are the main differences for you? And you're really qualified to answer this question, is like 30 years of talk therapy, 3 months of this. What's the fundamental differences for you? Like, what made it so successful for you?
I actually don't think talking therapy works for trauma. I think talking therapy probably works for some things, but not. I've got diagnosed with chronic complex PTSD, whatever it is. Yeah. I don't think it works. It can't have. I've worked really hard for 30. I've worked just as hard in this as I have done for 30 years. It can't work, because this has changed my life in a few months. In one session, this changed my life. And I don't know how, because I guess I don't know how the brain works. So, and maybe people don't know how it works, but it does work. And I don't think personally that talking therapies work when you have trauma. I think you just need something to, whatever it is done to your brain, just to have it done to your brain, and then you can move on.
And you know, tonight we specifically focusing on brain spotting, but we haven't spoken about, you know, the host of other therapies we use, because, you know, I may start off using one technique because you've experienced X, Y, and Z, or you have a very strong memory flashback emotion, and we go and we move into, so every session, you know, we could do 3 or 4 different techniques, and then, you know, we'd break in between, give your brain some rest, we talk, catch up, have a laugh, drink a cup of tea, have peppermint tea, and then move on again really well. So, you know, we're at it. So it's like we're having a go at your brain and your body. So we used both, didn't we? It's very important that we use the brain. We recognize that actually trauma recovery therapy has to incorporate the work of the body and the mind. And, you know, we worked through that amazingly. But there's so much more we could talk about. I think we could be on here for an hour describing exactly each technique, but, you know, we're here to talk about brain spotting and its phenomenal success with helping you process. So, you know, Susan, I cannot thank you enough for coming on tonight, spending your Thursday evening talking into the camera. I'm pretty sure that you know, I just hope that if we convince or we help one person tonight recognize and go, I'm doing this, I have to do this, then I think we've won, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm so glad to be here because you've changed my life, and so I'll help you anytime.
You're a star. You're a star. So thank you, Susan. That's brilliant. I'm going to now I'm going to move into a bit of a technical scientific description of, sorry, Susan, I'm just going to unpin you if I can remember how to do that.
Do you still need me, or shall I go?
No, you can stay, you can go. We just thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah.
Cheers,
good luck, everyone.
Bye-bye. So I'm going to now jump into what is brain spotting exactly, and like how do we view it from like the technical term, and how does it work? So I'm just going to share my screen. Just give me a minute. Right, so okay, hang on, let me just try and find my PowerPoint. Okay, there it is. Right, okay, it's just going to take me a minute to swap over screens. Share. Okay, right, I will be with you in a second. Okay, so thanks to Susan. But actually, so what is brain spotting? So actually it's a brain-based therapy, and that's how we describe brain spotting. And it's a psychotherapy, and it uses a person's eye position to access where you hold unprocessed trauma in the brain. Now, where we look affects how we feel. So we use this as what we call a target, and we target the exact spot where the most negative emotion is held. And it's an incredible process, because when I start to take my clients into and we get them ready for a brain spotting session, they automatically can detect their brain spots before I even start them off. And once we've done it a few times, people will go, I know exactly where my spot is, you need to help me with it. Now, once we find the spot, the brain can then go on to find what it needs, process what's not been processed, and then heal it. So brain spotting deals with unprocessed events that become stuck in our nervous system. Now, they need to become unstuck, or they need to be moved and filed away by the hippocampus, which is at the back of the brain. It's actually the brain's long and short-term storage unit for us to feel like we have moved on from an event, a situation, a problem, an argument, or a thought even. Now, as we know, trauma can impact on the body. So brain spotting is not only effective for emotional issues, but it's very, very effective for physical issues too. So generally, we use brain spotting to treat trauma and PTSD. Amazing. You've just heard it. Anger, anxiety, chronic fatigue, depression, sports performance. So actually, there is a there's a variation of brain spotting that we use to improve performance. So some of my clients who have moved through trauma, we may carry on working because they've missed out on so much life. They see the potential and value. They've never seen the potential and value in themselves. So we move on and do performance related brain spotting, which is super exciting. So what exactly happens in our brain during brain spotting? So first of all, I've spoken before about neuroplasticity and how amazing it is, but it's the brain's ability to form a new neural connection. And this is the key. So it's simply our brain's ability to learn to change and to cope. But brain spotting shows it the way forward. So brain spotting helps the brain to locate the issue and work through it. Now, what sets brain spotting apart from any other therapy is that it accesses parts of the brain that verbal talk therapy cannot access, namely the subcortex region of the brain. It's, if I put a rod through my brain now and a spike at the top, it would meet in the middle. It'd be that bit, that deep bit that we just cannot access, or we find it really hard to access as humans. Now, it's actually referred to as the monkey brain, because it's the brain that gives us the most issues. Now, previously, we thought that our brains were not able to change or repair, but 20th century science tells us that it can. It has been proven to repair and regrow, even after the most horrific physical and mental damage. Your brain will regrow, it will grow back to size, and it will function normally again if you receive the right treatment. Now, we also take advantage of a system called neurogenesis. And this is the brain's capability to grow new cells. And it grows through our lifetime. Now, survivors of severe trauma have shown that there is sufficient shrinkage of the brain, and in particular, an area called the hippocampus. And that is the brain's filing system. It's in charge of organizing, of forming ideas, of storing information. And often my clients will say to me, I can't be on time to work. I don't want to be sociable. I can't stand being in a group. I'm not interested in what my friends are doing. I have no interest in my children or my husband or my wife or my family. I just can't cope. And that's because of reduced hippocampal size. So the good news is that will reform and change. So brain spotting and other psychodynamic therapies leads to the hippocampus regeneration and regrowth. So that is super, super exciting information. And now what exactly happens in a session? So you've heard from Susan, but more theoretically, in a nutshell, when something bothers us, we become agitated. There are positions in our visual field that match up with places where we hold this activation in our brain. And then we reflect what we feel through this activation in our body by focusing our brain on this space that we hold. We call it a space. Now, during a session, I will use a pointer and I guide you to where your spot is. Generally, the body responds, and I'm often able, I can read people's reactions. So, you know, this is where the point at which the body starts to feel the trauma and it will react. So this process helps the brain to find the point of trouble and it processes it properly. So sometimes my clients will twitch, yawn, cry, their nose itches, their fingers move involuntarily, as the brain helps the body move through and resolve whatever it was that is a problem. Sometimes I'll find that my clients even jump around to unrelated events or issues, and then they come back and forth, back and forth. It's a really fascinating process to watch and be part of. And it's either verbal or non-verbal. I've had clients who've not said a single word through the session, and we could have done a 45-minute brain spotting session. They've not said one single thing. We end the session and they go, oh my goodness, that was phenomenal. I've had other people who shout, cry, scream, talk non-stop, and they go, oh my goodness, I've just realized it's just not my fault and I couldn't have done anything about it. Bang. Okay, resolved. It's been resolved. So generally speaking, the brain is able to sufficiently work through an event and the accompanying emotions. And in reality, what it's doing is it's helping the hippocampus date stamp, file away, and process a traumatic memory. After this process, the brain is allowed to move on. So all reactions like anxiety and stress responses go away and they just diminish in time. So it's a super, super duper amazing therapy. I'm trained in it to the highest level. I use it every day in my one-to-one practice, in the people I work with and see, but it's only a very small part of the trauma recovery method. So we have an intense 3-month program. Susan's been through it. Now we actually offer a back end to it. We offer a 3-stage program that you can access through us, and it's just simply amazing. So I hope that I'm going to host some questions in a minute. I'm just going to stop the share for a moment, but I hope that this gives you a really good idea of what it is, how it's used, how absolutely effective it is. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to direct them to me. But at this point, I'm just going to stop the recording and then we can go into a question and answer.